The sun had barely begun to climb over the dusty highway when the old woman set her rickety wooden table outside the abandoned shack. Her hands trembled from exhaustion, her shoulders slumped with worry, and her eyes carried the kind of heaviness only those who have loved deeply and fear losing everything ever truly understand. She placed 3 bottles of homemade lemonade on the table, each one representing hope, a plea, and a promise. What she didn't know was that before the day ended, she would face the cruelty of strangers, the breaking point of despair, and an unexpected rescue that would restore her faith in humanity. Before the sun set, the road would witness a story people would whisper about for years. If you believe kindness and second chances can still change the world, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us spread stories that matter. Her name was Margaret, and for the past 6 months, life had tested her in ways she never imagined. Her husband, Robert, once a strong, cheerful mechanic who could fix anything with his hands, had fallen gravely ill. The medical bills piled up faster than she could read them. His medication alone cost more than what they earned in 3 months. She'd sold everything, their furniture, Robert's tools, even the small silver locket she'd kept since childhood. The only thing she refused to part with was his motorcycle, sitting in the shed like a silent witness to their life together. Near the edge of town, where travelers rarely stopped for anything except a stretch or a smoke, Margaret decided to sell lemonade just enough, she hoped, to buy Robert's next round of prescriptions. She squeezed every lemon by hand the night before, whispering prayers into the citrus scent. The table was old, wobbling with every breeze, but she stood confidently beside it, waiting for anyone to stop. But not every passerby carried kindness in their hearts. By mid-morning, a group of local troublemakers came swaggering down the road toward her stand. They were adults, but carried the immaturity of children who had never truly grown up. One of them snickered the moment they saw her. Another laughed, so loudly it startled a bird nearby. They made jokes about her age, her clothes, her lemonade, and even the table she stood behind. They imitated her shaky hands, mocked her desperate smile, and accused her of trying to scam people with overpriced lemonade, though she was charging barely $1 a bottle. Margaret tried to stay brave, but their words pierced her like shards of broken glass. She kept repeating to herself that she needed the money, that Robert depended on her, that she couldn't get upset, not today. She forced a smile, trying to keep her voice steady as she explained that she wasn't begging, only working. But the laughter grew louder. One man grabbed a bottle and shook it aggressively, then placed it back on the table with a mocking bow. And another pretended to be sympathetic and asked her why she looked so tired and sad. When she finally mentioned her husband's illness, instead of offering compassion, they rolled their eyes and said she was trying to guilt-trip them into buying her old lady juice. A part of her broke. The flutter of hope she had guarded all morning crumbled under their cruelty, and she felt tears sting her eyes. Her knees weakened, but she refused to let them see her fall. She took a slow breath, telling herself that not everyone in the world was heartless. Still, the humiliation was too heavy. She wondered whether she should give up, pack her things, and go home empty-handed again. Then, she heard it. A deep, rumbling growl rose from the road, a sound that became louder, closer, unmistakable. The group stopped laughing. Dust swirled in the air as the shadow of a motorcycle stretched across the dirt. Then another, and another. Within moments, 6 massive bikes rolled into sight, chrome gleaming under the sunlight, sharpened steel. The Hell Angels. They were known everywhere, sometimes feared, sometimes respected, but always noticed. Their jackets carried the iconic skull and wings, and their presence commanded silence. The troublemakers stepped back immediately, their bravado draining as quickly as their color. At the front of the roaring engines was a tall man with a hardened face, a long beard, and eyes that missed nothing. He pulled up right in front of Margaret's table, shut off his engine, and removed his helmet slowly. The entire world seemed to pause as he looked at her, then at the bottles of lemonade, then at the shaking group behind her. Margaret expected judgment, or perhaps indifference. Instead, the man smiled softly, a small, unexpected thing that warmed the cold air around them. He picked up a bottle of lemonade gently, as though it were something precious, and held it to the sunlight. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick wad of cash. Without a single word, he placed 5 large bills on her table. Margaret gasped. He then opened the lemonade and took a long drink, letting the moment stretch, letting the troublemakers watch. After wiping his beard, he turned and glanced at the group behind her. They lowered their heads instantly. Not a word passed between them, but the silence was louder than any threat could have been. One by one, the other riders stepped forward, buying bottles, leaving generous tips, patting Margaret's shoulder with a respect she had not felt in months. Some nodded at her with admiration. Others simply gave her a look, that said you're not alone. The troublemakers faded away quietly, disappearing into the distance without their arrogance, without their laughter, shrinking under the weight of their own shame. Margaret's hands trembled not from fear this time, but from overwhelming relief. She looked at the money on the table, tears blurring her vision. It was more than enough for Robert's medicine, doctor visits, food, and even repairs for the home they had nearly given up on. The leader of the Hell Angels placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, meeting her eyes with a kindness that broke her completely. She whispered a thank you that barely left her lips, but he heard it. He nodded once before putting on his helmet and revving his engine. The others followed, and together they thundered back down the road like guardians in leather and steel. Margaret stood alone again, but this time, she felt stronger, lifted by kindness from the most unexpected of protectors. If this story moved you, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep telling stories that touch the heart. Before you go, comment below, kindness still matters. And let this story remind you, heroes don't always look the way we expect. Sometimes they ride in on two wheels when we need them the most.